I mean, to be fair, organizations and leaders are just under have been and still are under so much pressure to deliver and deliver quickly and deliver really well and provide market value and all of that, I think this approach, if you are not sort of used to it and steeped in it and have seen the benefits of it, sort of feels soft. It feels like it might slow you down. And so, and if you feel like, yeah, I already know the answer, then there isn't a lot of tolerance for it until you either have this big disruption like we have right now, which is like, I don't have the data I'm used to, or, yes, my intuition's important, but I kind of feel like it's riskier than ever.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Carl Ponto. Each week I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week I'm excited to connect with Kate McRoberts. Kate is the CEO and managing principal of Fathom Consulting, a Minneapolis-based firm that helps organizations make human-centered decisions about their products, services, and strategies. With over 2 decades of experience at the intersection of business strategy, user insight, change management, and design thinking, Kate is known for helping teams navigate complexity and change with clarity and confidence. Congrats on helping teams navigate complexity and change with clarity and confidence, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thanks, Carl. Super excited to be here.
Awesome. So what is the relationship between confident decision-making and risk-taking? Because it seems like companies these days are dealing with a lot of uncertainty and risk involved with decisions. And like we kind of touched on this before we started recording, that a lot of the data they're used to basing their decisions off of to de-risk things isn't as reliable as it used to be, or isn't as reliable for as long as they're used to. So they're having to rely on more of that gut and intuition. So how do you help people navigate this landscape? Because it seems like the ways leaders have to make decisions needs to change, and that is definitely a risky proposition or a scary proposition for a lot of them.
Yeah, it is. This year I think has introduced just such an incredible amount of uncertainty for a lot of our clients anyway. We reached out to our clients across industries and different levels in the organization earlier this year just to see how they were all doing with the kind of lots of uncertainty happening out in the marketplace. And, I think what we heard is like what you just said, that folks the data that they're used to dealing with to help them make decisions, confident decisions, is just not as reliable or really ever changing as it used to be. So they are feeling like, rather than, they can't sort of pause and wait forever to make decisions about products or services or any strategic choices they need to make. So they're starting to have to move forward again and really kind of, rely on their intuition a little bit more and experience. And I think that is right for leaders, that there is always goodness in that, but also that introduces a lot of risks. So 2 things that they talked about is, one, being ready to sort of put yourself out there as a leader and take a risk, and be ready to change direction pretty quickly when you need to. But the second thing, and kind of where we come into the picture a lot, is really about kind of what's always been true, which is a huge way to de-risk any decision that you're making is to involve the people that are going to be affected by the decision that you're making about your product, your service, or your strategy. So that might be your users of your product, or your customer, or your employees. Like really engaging all of those humans in the decision that you're making is just one of the kind of most direct paths to help sort of increase your confidence in the decision that you're making and de-risk your efforts.
And it makes a lot of sense to me that involving more of the people that involved with the impact that the decision is going to make, being involved in the decision-making process, or at least having consulted in it, is great, because it you'll open yourself up and get a lot more insights and perhaps more intuition from those people who are actually been through the same sort of experiences, but from a different perspective that you wouldn't get if you're just sticking to the people that are in the boardroom making the decisions. And also they have also more like up-to-date relevant insights from, say, your clients. If you're talking to your employees about a decision, they might have just heard something that could sway the decision that you might not have gotten all the chain to you yet, depending on how the organization is structured. So getting the frontline people that have their pulse, their finger on the pulse more of what really is going on a moment-to-moment basis could also really help the decision-making process when the data you get isn't as old as it used to be, or usually was before you make a decision.
Yeah, for sure. And it seems sort of obvious to say, yeah, and involve people in the decision and get feedback. But it is surprising at how infrequent it really is. Or people, and let's take a product development process. People might be used to doing some market research or maybe user testing on a product once or twice. But really what I'm talking about here is sort of a structured, continuous, sort of iterative feedback along the whole kind of figuring, your concept to release of it, both from and getting with customers and with inside the organization and with stakeholders inside the organization to make sure people are really that whatever you're ultimately releasing meets a real need, is highly usable by the people who are going to use it, and is really adopted and supported by the by inside the organization. So it's easy to say, but it's really not often done. And we see and there's so many examples of where it really doesn't work well. So we worked with a medical device that was creating a product for surgeons to use, where they were kind of having to use both of their hands to direct a piece of equipment inside of somebody's body. And they were pretty far along in that product development and design process and needed to do some testing to get FDA approval. And it became pretty clear that this product wasn't working well at all for an important segment, which was female surgeons who tended to have smaller hands and physical hand sizes. And it was designed by a physician who was like, I know the need, I know the technology, I know the innovation, and we can drive this product through, but really sort of have leapt over the part about not the tech happening inside the patient's body, but the surgeon who was actually going to be using the technology, and just wasn't shaped like that. The physical hands weren't shaped like that. And so this a small example, but think of all of the investment and years of invention and all of that went into it to kind of hit this point at the end, pretty far in the design process, just because you haven't really involved, because you just sort of leapt over the part where you really needed to engage the people who were actually going to be using it.
Yeah, it's funny, or tragically funny, how what we're talking about, we're about like the way to de-risk your decisions are to get people involved beyond the boardroom and actually talk to the people who are going to be using it or are going to be influenced by it. That's just seems like such a best practice for anything and any time. And it's crazy that it requires people to be in the situation where everything's so uncertain, and they're kind of the crutches they've relied on by all the kind of data-driven decision making, all the metrics that they, like the stats they can point to. Instead, it's like, well, you don't necessarily, when those you don't have those anymore. All you have to get back to talking to real people and actually getting to know them and
yes,
asking questions and not just assuming you know everything about everyone and what they need and actually care about. And it's like, the fact that it's gone this far and it requires such a massive paradigm shift in the market to get people to realize that, oh, maybe if we actually started stopped assuming we knew everything and asked questions of the people that we're trying to make something for, our product will be better. It's like, duh. How you,
Yeah, yep. We'll take it any way we can get it, right? Of people really recognizing kind of the value of engaging, humans in the process. And I think, we are just, I mean, to be fair, organizations and leaders are just under have been and still are under so much pressure to deliver and deliver quickly and deliver really well and provide market value and all of that, I think this approach, if you are not sort of used to it and steeped in it and have seen the benefits of it, sort of feels soft. It feels like it might slow you down. And so, and if you feel like, yeah, I already know the answer, then there isn't a lot of tolerance for it until you either have this big disruption like we have right now, which is like, I don't have the data I'm used to, or, yes, my intuition's important, but I kind of feel like it's riskier than ever. Or you've been around some giant failure or like where something that got released in the marketplace or some new sort of decision you made strategically for your organization sort of was a big failure, or there was a ton of resistance or a lack of adoption, and you sort of have the realization that, it's the pay now or pay later, right? You actually have to, you're going to have much better success and de-risk what you're doing when you involve people. But it is true that, does seem like best practice, but there's a lot of reasons that people sort of jump over it or don't want to prioritize it.
yeah, I think that you mentioned the pressure to go faster and get things done quickly and get that result as quickly as possible. And I think there's that definitely real and legitimate pressure for it. But it's also, I think there's that flip side of, you can be the first to crash into that wall, or you can go a little bit slower and can get to your actual destination you wanted to get to in the first place, but still be successful. And it's like there's, I think a lot of companies are struggling with now is they've tried to cut so many corners and make things so efficient and speedy. And a lot of times they see, the human element is messy and kind of slow and is not as streamlined as they'd like, because humans are messy, and it does take some time to build these relationships and trust and communication. But if you without any humans involved, you don't have a product or a service or a business. Like it's always there's humans on either side. And if you don't take well enough care of the people involved, then you don't have a business, you don't have a product, you don't have any sales. And so it's like, I think the conditions have gotten pushed so far towards the speed and efficiency and data, and haven't been focused enough on the people, that paradoxically, to the mindset, the way to speed up your growth and success and adoption is now to slow down, pump the brakes at least a little bit so you can make some of these corners without skidding into a wall, and still keep some of the speed, but not be going so fast that you blow past the red flags and end up in a ditch with your car on fire.
Right.
Because then nobody wins. You just basically, you have this rush to failure you can't necessarily rebound from. Like, you don't get the FDA approval, or you launch a product and no one buys it, or you try and make a change to your company and a bunch of key people quit because there's all sorts of examples of businesses shooting themselves in the foot because they forget that they still have to take care of the people involved. And yeah, you need to find a better balance between those two pressures of speed and efficiency and structure and process, but also build them around in a way that involves all the people, like you've been talking about, how to really get people to, or get companies to be more human-centered in their decision-making. Because if you completely cut that part out, you're bound to have some of these catastrophic failures that we're seeing.
Yeah, one of the things we often say is, yeah, when you move too fast, that's when the harm happens, right? You gotta really, that's when your car runs off the road, when you're moving too fast about it. But it is a balance, right? Because there are very real pressures of, of needing to get things to market and provide value and grow. So I do have a lot of empathy for, our clients that are trying to balance those, and there is ability. And I think that it's finding like where are the points that we need to get the humans in the room and gather all of those perspectives. And of course, it's going to be different for everything, but there are very obvious times and when to do it, sort of, some of those upfront perspective gatherings. And then as you're iterating through decisions or iterating through product designs, making sure you've got all those perspectives embedded. I think one of the other things that, we've seen too in the past couple of years is just about getting sort of using this human-centered approach just on team alignment and momentum. So one of the things that we've noticed is for sure kind of coming out of COVID and the Great Resignation and when everybody kind of moved jobs, that a lot of teams were new to each other and people were new to each other. And kind of the way we form relationships through work is different than it used to be. So that people were not sort of mistrusting each other. They were really struggling to make decisions as a team because they just didn't know each other very well. And they didn't have a lot of sort of trust and shared history, and things are moving so fast and, Zoom meeting to back Teams meetings that there's just really no time or priority to say, I know you, I know what you're good at, I know what you're weird about, and you know me, and you know what I'm good at, and you know what I'm weird about. And, we can have that sort of team and real trust with one another that allows us to ultimately move faster, ultimately take risks with one another and push back against each other or say, I have a different perspective about that, or sort of have some of that healthy friction on teams that makes to good decision making. But people are have been really struggling to do that. So one of the other pieces of our business has been rising pieces of our business has been that sort of human-centric facilitation on teams of just to create alignment and shared understanding and deepen sort of trust with each other to be able to move forward with strong decisions and with alignment.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to make because the teams, like if you just kind of take a handful of people with the same or similar resumes or similar like complementary skill sets and just drop them in a room and say, build a thing that works.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. That's you're going to be in all sorts of trouble. And so like so much of what makes the business side of relationships work is that personalization, that personal side, that getting to know people beyond their job title or like where they sit in an office. And so I think it's cool that you're helping with that. And actually one of the first episodes I recorded, I think it's episode 3, was with a woman that is working on helping companies make internal podcasts where they're interviewing team members just to talk about who they are as a human being, so that other people are listening go, oh, I can relate to this person. I feel more connected to this team member. And it's not anything about that's going to be shared like outside the company, but just a way for other employees to understand who is on the team, when someone's like thumbnail shows up on a Zoom call, they know more than the person looks like that idea. Shoulders up, And I think that's so important because, like you said, there's that connection and trust and the feeling of belonging that is often lacking in workplace teams or with people's work in general, because there's no real sense of community or connection to the people that they're working with. And so it's something that when companies are, again, trying to get things to go faster, investing some time for people to not be working on the work stuff and just be working on the human stuff will expedite the work they're doing later, because it's not just nose to the grindstone all the time.
Yep. Yeah, and it's one of the things I say is, and we practice it around here at Fathom all the time, is sort of prioritizing that, relationship building with one another, because we know it will ultimately speed us up. It will ultimately make us better. But when we talk about it, with our clients, a lot of times, again, it's back to that it feels like soft and HR-y and all of those things. But if you actually look at the science behind it and you think about, the literature behind it, it's like Ted Lasso or any sort of silly, motley crew of sports movie, kids coming together and then they know each other and they have trust and then they have success. It's like, it to be true and you see it. And it is actually one of the it's not soft at all. It's one of the hardest metric things you can do to create actual success and momentum and speed over time. But it is hard to prioritize in today's environment with all the pressures that everybody's facing and all the exhaustion and burnout that everybody already is feeling and facing, to try to feel like it's one more thing you got to do to get to know your colleagues at a deeper level when kind of you just want to go home. So it's a battle that leaders need to face. But when you do it and you kind of get all in and the community's there and people are feeling that sense of belonging, it can't be beat in terms of outcome.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for connecting with me today, Kate. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection podcast, please leave a review and like and share it. If you'd like to connect with myself or Kate, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.